Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a massive shift in medieval Indian philosophy. We're looking at the Vedanta wars and the rise of the singing saints. I want you to imagine just for a second that the absolute ultimate mystery of the universe, like whether you are totally one with God or completely separate, all comes down to how you read one single cryptic sentence. Think about that. Thousands of years of debate hinging on just a handful of words. We're going to explore how medieval Indian philosophy transformed from a series of highly elite intellectual debates in the ivory towers of Sanskrit scholarship into a massive, vibrant movement of singing saints, all starting with how you translate a single phrase. And here it is, 3 little words from the ancient Upanishads, tat, tvam, asi. That art thou, or you are that. It sounds simple, right? Well, it actually fractured Indian thought. From this one single sentence, 3 brilliant philosophers spun out 3 entirely different, irreconcilable visions of reality, effectively launching the Vedanta wars. Part 1. The Ivory Tower, 1 sentence, 3 meanings. So let's step into the ivory tower of the 8th century. Imagine 3 people reading the exact same, deeply complex poem, yet coming away with 3 totally different meanings of what the author intended. Our first reader is Adi Shankaracharya. His stance is Advaita, which means non-dualism. For Shankara, reality is one, period. Only Brahman exists. The rest of it, you, me, the physical world around us, that's Maya. It's an illusion of difference where there's actually total unity. So for him, liberation isn't about your soul traveling somewhere to meet God. It's waking up to the fact that you are already Brahman, just dreaming that you're separate. Well, fast forward 3 centuries, and Ramanuja reads that exact same text. He basically says, hold on, Shankara, you've taken this way too far. Ramanuja brings us Vishishtadvaita, or qualified non-dualism. He argues, yes, there is one reality, but it has real internal distinctions. Individual souls, the physical world, they are totally real. They make up the body of Brahman. And because you are a real part of this whole, Ramanuja argued that devotion to a personal God isn't just some beginner-level stepping stone. It is a fully philosophically justified path to liberation. Then give it another century, and Madhvacharya enters the chat. He looks at both of their arguments and goes, nope, you guys are still way too close to monism. Madhva champions Dvaita, or strict dualism. He argues that God and the soul are permanently and truly distinct. They never merge, ever. And because you are forever separate from God, devotion is literally the only correct and logical relationship between 2 entirely distinct things. When you look at them side by side, you really see the core of the Vedanta wars. These 3 masters laid out a massive philosophical puzzle. You've got Shankara putting knowledge first, Ramanuja blending unity with devotion, and Madhva demanding absolute separation and devotion. 1 starting point, 3 radically different answers. And believe it or not, this is an argument that is actually still very much alive in temple debates across South India today. Part 2. Antithesis. Philosophy hits the streets. Okay, so while those elite scholars were arguing over dense Sanskrit texts, a completely different kind of energy was exploding out in the everyday, vibrant streets of medieval India. Enter the Bhakti movement. We usually translate Bhakti simply as devotion, but we really need to understand it as a deeply philosophical devotion. This wasn't just some simple, unthinking religious feeling. It was a robust, highly sophisticated philosophical response that completely bypassed the priests, the scholars, and the rigid social hierarchies of the day. It claimed boldly that liberation could be achieved purely through love. What's amazing is that this was a massive, cross-cultural wave led by incredibly diverse voices. We're talking about a Muslim weaver, a Rajput princess, a Brahmin woman who renounced marriage, a government minister, and a regional scholar. Think about how disruptive that was for such a highly stratified society. These voices were far, far removed from the traditional male scholars sitting up in the ivory tower. Let's look at Kabir, a 15th century weaver from Varanasi. Born into a Muslim family but deeply influenced by Hindu thought, Kabir created this stunning synthesis of the two. He argued that God is completely beyond our human categories. You don't need a temple, you don't need a mosque, and you absolutely do not need an intermediary or a priest to experience the divine. Imagine dropping that bombshell back then, or honestly, even today. Then there's the fierce, unrelenting empathy and action of Mirabai, a princess in Rajasthan. She claimed her only true husband was the divine Krishna. When her royal earthly in-laws actually tried to poison her for her radical behavior, tradition says she drank the cup and remained completely unharmed. She abandoned her palace to sing out in public, proving that these profound spiritual acts were deeply tied to very real social rebellion. And the poetry from these Bhakti saints, it could be startlingly direct. Take Akka Mahadevi, a 12th century Kannada poet saint who actually renounced a king. She asked, "Why would I cover myself before the one who sees everything?" She wrote these incredibly punchy, short prose poems called vachanas that completely dismantled the gender norms of her day. Her devotion was so absolute that she challenged the very social expectations of modesty and physical form. The crucial takeaway here is that figures like Basava and Tulsidas weren't just sitting under trees writing nice poetry. They were actively democratizing philosophy for the everyday person. Basava turned abstract thought into real social reform by flat-out rejecting the caste hierarchy. Tulsidas took dense, unapproachable Sanskrit Vedanta and translated it into Aldi, a local language. He made the deepest philosophical truths literally singable by anybody. It was a remarkably clever way to spread complex ideas like wildfire. Part 3. Synthesis. Guru Nanak's radical response. Now, let's head up to the Punjab in the late 15th century. Guru Nanak steps into this heavily fractured landscape of Hindu and Muslim thought, of scholars and singing saints, and creates an entirely new philosophical framework. After his Enlightenment experience, the first words attributed to him were, "There is no Hindu, there is no Muslim." This is absolutely vital to grasp. Sikhism, which stems from his teachings, wasn't just some neat compromise between two religions. It was a distinct, transcending philosophical response to those big medieval questions about the nature of reality. Guru Nanak anchored his entire philosophy in the concept of Ik Onkar. There is one God. And that reality is absolute and completely formless. It's beyond the rigid boundaries of existing religious texts, beyond any name and beyond any image. He just cuts right through all those theological debates from the ivory tower. And he didn't just leave it in the abstract. He outlined a highly practical, everyday application called the path of Nam. First, you recognize the formless God. Second, you reject false caste hierarchies and empty rituals, because doing rituals without understanding is just pointless, right? And third, you practice ethical living. He took those incredibly lofty Vedanta debates and grounded them in lived, daily ethical action. A real game changer. Part 4. Philosophy for the people. As we wrap up this explainer, just think about the incredible journey we've taken today. The deepest, most complex questions of human existence literally moved out of the isolated chambers of Sanskrit scholars and straight into the noisy, vibrant streets and markets of India. Philosophy became songs and protests. And perhaps most radically for the time, women weren't just on the margins of this tradition. They were fiercely championing it, standing at the absolute center of an intellectual revolution. Which brings us right to the edge of the modern era. We've seen Indian philosophy survive internal debates, religious fractures, and massive social revolutions. But what happens when the 19th century rolls around? Can this incredibly rich, diverse philosophical tradition survive contact with the immense weight of British colonialism? Well, we are going to unpack that epic clash in our next explainer. You definitely won't want to